In this skill focus activity, Synonym Sort, we're going to take a look at how connotation plays a big part in choosing the right synonyms. We also help clarify what exactly a synonym is. First, let's get something straight. What is a synonym? Well, it is not a word that means the same or about the same as another word. That's simply not true. If it meant the same thing, I'm here to say we would only have one word. So, what's the difference, right? Why do we have more than one word that is related, but is not the same word? And that's really the key to what synonyms are. How would we define it? Well, we'd like to say that synonyms are words that are related. They have similar meanings, but not the same. They require context, which means what is the synonym about, right? That really helps us know what words are going to fit in that particular context or that particular sentence, that particular spot in terms of what it's about. And lastly is that they are words on a spectrum. So yes, they're similar. Yes, they're on a spectrum. Yes, they're related, but there is something different about them. And the context really matters to help figure them out. So this activity is all about giving students practice of looking at synonyms and deciding how they are related. What's the connection between them? When do I need to use one versus the other? How do I start to discern the difference between synonyms and what makes an appropriate insertion of a synonym into their writing? So here are the steps. The first is to look at the focus word. So this focus word right here is just the word run, right? And we've got a sentence that says, would you like to go on a run with me? Okay. So then we're going to take a look at synonyms. How are they different from the focus word? So in this case, we have the synonym of jog and sprint. And as we think about these two words, what comes to mind? How are jog, sprint, and run related, right? Do they mean the same thing? Definitely not, right? It's very different if I asked you to go on a jog with me, or if I said, do you want to go on a sprint with me, or do you want to go on a run with me, right? So this is where we can really start to see the difference between words and why it's so important to teach students a very different definition for synonyms than the one that we typically see. It is not words that mean the same thing. They are words that are connected, but have a different meaning. So in this case, how are they connected? What is the spectrum that they're on? And that's what we're going to decide here with step 3. Sort the synonyms on the spectrum and add the degrees. So what we mean by that is what changes. So we're slower and we get faster, right? With these particular synonyms. And then with step 4, we sort them and we're going to add context, real world examples. So in this case, we've got jog as the slower synonym, right? A jog is slower than a run and a sprint would be faster than a run. And then we've got these real world examples or context that can really help understand this particular synonym. So for jog, we want to think about that it's for exercise or to warm up, and that it's slower than running so you can actually do it with friends and still chat, right? So if I asked you to go on a jog with me, then that means hopefully we'd still be able to have a conversation, right? We wouldn't be just completely out of breath from the very first step. Versus with a sprint, what's the context? What's the real world examples for a sprint? Well, that's when you're in a relay or you're being chased, quite honestly, right? That's about when I like to sprint is if I'm being chased by something, right? And so it's a lot faster, right? And so that's the next little part that it says sprinting is super fast running that is done in short bursts. So you can't sprint for 20 minutes, right? It's just not possible unless we're, I guess, an Olympic athlete. But in this case, we're going to say that sprinting is really meant to be done in short bursts, right? To get away or in some kind of competition race situation. It's not exactly a very inviting thing to invite someone on, right? So would you like to go on a sprint with me? I'm not going to get a lot of takers on that, right? And so the last piece of this process is to discuss the difference between the synonyms further by answering extension questions. So for each of the synonyms that you'll see in this presentation, you're going to have some questions that are just meant to kind of further get into the differences between these synonyms. And granted, there's a lot more than just jog and sprint that are related to run, but this is enough to get students really thinking about, I got to think about the degrees of separation. What is different and how are they different? How are they lined up on the spectrum, so that I can see the relationships between them? So, extension question: what would happen if you thought you were going on a jog with a friend, but they really meant sprint, right? This is our causal reasoning design, where we take a look at an event that you thought you were going on a jog, but your friend turned it into a sprint. What are the effects? Well, it might be something like, I just tried my best to run as fast as I could and beat them. I was totally surprised and yelled, "Hey, wait up!" Right? Or maybe I said, "See you later," and I just started walking slowly behind them, right? So just having fun, kind of brainstorming and coming up with ideas. There's not necessarily a correct answer here. It's more about, can students apply their knowledge of the synonyms and take it a little bit deeper with these extension questions? So let's just preview what's in here. We've got smell as another focus word. What's that smell is the question. And you can see here, we've got 4 in this case: odor, stench, aroma, and scent. So you'll want to walk through the steps and just talk through, how are they related? What's the difference between an odor and aroma, or an odor and a stench even? How are they related? What's the difference between a stench and a smell? So you just ask questions about, what are the connections between these words? How are they connected? Is there a sequence of them? And in this case, we're going to come up with that there's a stinkier and a more pleasant kind of smell associated with these different words, right? And then there will be a place for the context and real world examples to pop up. So this is actually intended for you to come out of kind of presentation mode, and you will just grab these and say, oh, you know what? Odor is pretty stinky, but I think stench is actually stinkier. So I would actually set them up like this. Let's see. May not line up exactly, because there's definitely an overlap here. So I think that kind of makes sense here. And then when I think about the difference between scent and aroma, they both are more pleasant. I would say aroma is the most pleasant, like if there were flowers or cookies, right? Really delicious scents. And then scent would be kind of next here. So maybe I'll put that one up and then this one down. Scent would be something like a fragrance in the air, right? Something that smells good, like there's a nice smell to it, and it's distinguishable, it's specific, but it may not be something that I just say, oh, that is just an incredible smell. What is that baking in your oven, right? So this looks like a pretty good order here. I might slide that one over just to have it lined up the way that we did on the other side. And then we just want to think about context or real world examples. So we can come down here, and when we think about stench, I would think of something like rotting fish, or garbage in the summer, right? Just something that's just horrifically disgusting smelling, right? Versus if we came to odor, I might say something like tennis shoes, right? Sometimes shoes can have a little bit of an odor. Sometimes they can have a stench, right? But we'll go with odor here. Or like a musty towel, right? A towel that just didn't get dried fully, that has an odor. I'm going to skip over smell at the moment and come over to scent. And I might say something like perfume. Might even say like flowers here, or roses in particular. And then one more for aroma. This definitely makes me think of food in particular. So I would say like cookies, baking, or even like waffle cones. If you ever walk by an ice cream or a gelato shop and they're making waffle cones, that aroma just pulls you in, makes you want to eat those. So waffle cones, well, they're baking too, so I'll put that as well. So you can see here, we've got all these great context clues that help us. And then a smell that generally has a little bit of a negative connotation to it, but it might be something like a cleaner, or like I I always think kind of like a chemical smell. Um, a cleaner, a chemical, something we're not sure what it is, right? So it's not bad necessarily. It's just something we're not quite sure what it is. There's just a smell, right? And so let me just arrange this so it's a little bit cleaner to see. So it also has to do with the intonation. So what we're dealing with right now is connotation, the hidden meaning of words, right? So this is really important for students to know so that if they go into a thesaurus and they just say, oh, what are synonyms for smell? They know that they just can't just choose any of these random ones. And let's actually just do that. Let's go to thesaurus.com for a second here. And when I type in smell, you'll see here we've got aroma, bouquet, flavor, perfume, scent, stench. So we have a lot of them, but there is, as we've already determined, a very big difference between aroma and stench, and yet they are all listed right here. So as a student, I don't just want them to come here and say, okay, yep, stench, and I might say the stench of the roses filled the room. Well, that doesn't really make sense unless they were really moldy and disgusting, which they're not in this case. So we want to make sure that students are understanding the connotation, that they're not just randomly choosing a synonym. The second part that's really important on this particular slide is the intonation. So if I said, what's that smell? Or if I said, what's that smell? Right? I'm going one of the two ways, right? I'm either indicating that something smells amazing. What's that smell? Or I'm indicating that something smells really disgusting, right? Like, what's that smell? Ugh, it's terrible. So that's the intonation, how my voice changes to communicate a message. So words like smell can go kind of either ways, right? We would never hear someone say, what's that aroma? Right? That doesn't make sense. So sometimes words have an intonation change that indicates where they fall on the spectrum, but they always have, other words always have a connotation to them, like stench and odor and scent and aroma. Okay. So as we keep going through this presentation here, we go back onto this one. You can see here, you're going to have more focus. Oh, actually, we forgot this part right down here. What would happen if you walked into a cafeteria and asked one of the cooks, what's that odor? What about if you asked, what's that aroma, right? So what's going to change with the reaction of the cooks if you said, what's that odor? No, I don't think they're going to be very pleased with you, and they may not let you have any of the food, right? But if you say, what's that aroma? You might get seconds, right? So understanding the synonyms helps us answer these questions and talk through what the possibilities are. So for the next one, look, you've got ogle, stare, and gaze, and you are more than welcome to go on to, this is thesaurus.com. It's one of my favorite websites to go to, but it's a sister to dictionary.com. And when you go to dictionary.com, you can just type in words. So ogle might be something that's new for students, and you can say, what does that mean? To look at amorously, to look or to stare. So it's just, you just can't take your eyes off of whatever it is you're looking at. You ogle, right? You just stare at it. So these two are definitely going to be related. Let's see if we can find stare with more of a connotation to it. To gaze fixedly and intently, especially with the eyes wide open. To be boldly or obtrusively conspicuous. Right? To stare means to stare. That's very helpful. But really the eyes are fixed open, right? So when I think about stare, I just think of somebody's eyes are really wide and really open, versus with ogle, it's a little bit more like, oh, I could look at you forever, right? And then we've got gaze, which is really like, I just want to sit here and gaze at the beautiful sunset, right? So by going to dictionary.com, you can do a little bit of research, use that Google brain, get the definitions, have these great discussions about these words, and then be able to sort them. So you've got look, you've got skinny, and smart as the last ones here. And what I would also encourage you to do is just keep duplicating these slides and adding in other words. Look for synonyms. Do some of your own work when you're working on writing to let students explore what synonyms could be. And just notice that the degrees change. Some of them are negative to positive. Some of them, like we had stinkier to more pleasant, we had slower to faster. So you want to think about what the degree change is in the red and the yellow to indicate how the synonyms are changing. It's not always negative to positive, right? Look at this, jog to sprint. There's not a negative connotation to either of those words. Lastly, I want to just share with you, there is a series of books. They're called Vocabulary Ladders. This is not associated with writing with design. We're just a huge fan of these books. They give students a set of words that are all related, and there's a series of activities. They have to put them in order. They put them on ladders in this case. They have to do some comparison between the words. They have to use them in sentences. So there's some wonderful opportunities for students to learn words that are related that they then can understand and discern the differences between to better utilize them in their vocabulary or in their writing. So not only is it growing their vocabularies, but it's also helping them discern the difference between synonyms. So it's a really fantastic resource. And you could always replicate this for any topic that students are studying and have the related words for them to sort and work with. So the power of synonyms is incredibly important for students to understand. The synonym sort is all about knowing how to choose that specific word that's really going to make the difference in their writing and begin to really understand how connotation plays a huge role in that, right? We have to know the hidden meaning of the synonyms in order to choose the right one. So enjoy your synonym sorting.